I never wanted revenge. All I ever wanted was peace, and for the HOA to leave my land alone. The green belt behind my house wasn't just a strip of trees and shrubs, it was a natural barrier. A living, breathing shield that protected our entire neighborhood from the windstorms that swept across our region every summer. I planted half of it with my own hands. I watered it during droughts. I walked through it every morning. But the HOA, they called it unapproved vegetation. They said it blocked visual uniformity. And their president, Karen Whitlow herself, stood in front of my yard with her pastel blazer and her smug clipboard smile and said the words that changed everything. "We're clearing it tomorrow." I warned them. I begged them. I showed them city environmental reports, erosion charts, even old photos proving the developer designed it as a windbreak. They laughed. They called me dramatic. They said, "Stop pretending to be a scientist. It's just bushes." But when they tore it down, when the bulldozers ripped through the roots, when the first sandstorm of the season arrived, their entire street disappeared under a mountain of dirt, knee-deep drifts swallowing mailboxes, porches, cars, lawns, everything. People say karma works slowly. Not this time. This time it came with 80 mph winds. Before we begin, quick question for everyone watching. What would you do if your HOA destroyed something that protected your home? Would you fight back or let karma handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. And if you're into stories where corrupt HOAs get exactly what they deserve, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, let me take you back to the day this entire disaster began. The morning they came, the neighborhood was too quiet, the kind of quiet that feels staged, like a movie scene right before the explosion. I woke up to the low rumble of machinery, a thumping vibration that rattled my windows. At first, I thought it was construction work down the highway. But then I heard shouting, voices, heavy boots on pavement. I rushed outside and froze. My heart sank. 2 bulldozers were parked at the edge of the green belt, engines growling bright yellow paint cutting through the dusty sunrise. And standing in front of them, surrounded by 3 HOA board members, was Karen. Clipboard tucked under her arm like she was the queen of the cul-de-sac universe. She smirked when she saw me. "Good morning," she said sweetly. "Beautiful day for a cleanup, isn't it?" "Cleanup, cleanup." "This isn't trash," I snapped. "This is a protective ecosystem. It's literally designed to stop wind erosion. You can't touch it." Karen tilted her head, that passive-aggressive squint she always used when she wanted to sound smarter than she was. "The board voted. It violates visual guidelines." "It's not even your land," I shouted. "It's city-designated open space. You don't have jurisdiction." "Oh, but we do," she said, tapping her clipboard. "We sent notices." "No, you didn't." "Yes, we did." Her smile widened. "Check your email." Everyone watching this knows that HOA email notices are like Schrödinger's messages, somehow always sent, never received, and totally convenient for their power trips. I stepped closer. "Listen to me. If you tear this down, the wind will sweep sand straight into the neighborhood. This green belt is the only barrier. You're putting the entire community at risk." Board member Greg, the guy whose only personality trait was wearing tennis shorts year-round, scoffed. "Oh, please, I've lived here 10 years and never seen anything worse than a dust gust." "That's because of the trees," I shot back. "That's literally the point." Karen raised one hand dramatically. "You've stalled enough. Begin." And the bulldozers lurched forward. I panicked. "Stop, you can't." Karen got inches from my face, lowering her voice. "You're not special, you don't get exemptions, and frankly, this little forest you've been guarding makes the neighborhood look unkept." Unkept. The irony would hit her like a truck later. The machines roared to life. Steel teeth chewed through the underbrush, ripping out bushes, shredding tree roots, grinding decades of growth into dust. Birds scattered, sand lifted into the air. It felt violent, wrong. I ran back inside, grabbed city documents, and sprinted toward them. "Look," I shouted. "This entire area is designated as an erosion control zone. You're violating city code." But Karen only rolled her eyes. "The board already reviewed your imaginary paperwork. We're done here." Imaginary, city-stamped documents. Imaginary, I called the city, called code enforcement, called environmental services, but it was Saturday. Everyone was closed. The HOA knew it. They planned it deliberately. By noon, the green belt was gone, nothing but bare dirt stretching out behind my home like a wound. I stood there in disbelief, breathing in the dust swirling around my legs. The horizon looked wrong, exposed, naked. For the first time in years, you could see the dry plains beyond the neighborhood, acres of loose soil waiting for one good wind to lift off and bury everything in its path. Karen strutted over, triumphant. "See, much cleaner already." I stared at her. "You just doomed your own neighborhood," she laughed. "Oh, stop, you're being dramatic." I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered, "You have no idea what you've done." That night the wind picked up, just a whisper at first, a warning, but I felt it. The way desert winds shift, slow, gathering, hungry. Weather alerts buzzed on my phone, a sandstorm warning, category severe. I stepped outside. The sky was turning orange. The wind sounded like a distant train. And somewhere down the street, somewhere near the HOA president's perfectly landscaped lawn, I heard the first scream. The wind began as a low hum, the kind that vibrates against windows like distant thunder. By the time the sun dipped behind the rooftops, that hum had grown into a howl. I stepped onto my porch and felt the air shift, the pressure tightening, the way it always does before a storm. Only this time there were no trees to soften it, no shrubs to break the force. Nothing but raw, exposed dirt stretching behind the row of houses like a runway for disaster. The sky was turning a murky red, the kind of color that makes animals burrow and neighbors shut their doors. Alerts kept pinging on my phone: severe sandstorm warning, high winds, low visibility, stay indoors. But some people didn't understand. Some people still believed HOA Karen when she insisted this would be nothing but a dusty breeze. I saw her across the cul-de-sac, arms crossed, talking to two board members with this irritated expression, as if the wind personally inconvenienced her plans. She looked up at me, then rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic for standing outside observing the literal apocalypse forming over our heads. "Go inside," she shouted. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene," I shouted back. "Karen, the ground is lifting," and it was, little puffs of sand, tiny spirals. Dust devils forming where the bulldozers had scraped the earth raw. Board member Greg cupped his hand over his eyes. "It's fine, it's just wind." Then the first blast hit. A roaring gust slammed into the street like a punch, a shockwave that sent leaves, paper cups, and loose gravel tumbling in a frantic swarm. A trampoline flew up from a backyard like it weighed nothing. A garbage bin skidded across the road, slamming into Karen's car. She shrieked. "MYLEXUS?" Oh, she cared now. I turned to go inside when I saw something that made my stomach drop. A wall of sand rising on the horizon, towering like a giant wave made of earth. It stretched across the entire prairie, a massive, rolling mountain of dust charging toward our neighborhood with terrifying speed. Someone screamed down the street. A man yelled for his kids to get inside. A woman stumbled as the wind shoved her sideways, clutching her dog's collar so hard the poor beagle yelped. Another alert buzzed. Imminent impact. "Take cover." I ran into my house, slammed the door, and locked it. The windows rattled like they were going to explode. The whole house felt alive, trembling under the force. And then darkness swallowed everything. The sandstorm hit like a freight train. It blasted the siding. It pounded the roof. Sand poured through every tiny crack, filling the air like smoke. The wind screamed, a high-pitched, endless shriek that drilled into your skull. I ducked behind the kitchen island, covering my head as debris, twigs, gravel, scraps of wood hammered the walls. I could barely hear my own breathing over the roaring wind. But then I heard something else, faint but unmistakable. Panic screams, people shouting outside. Someone banged on my door hard. "Help, please!" I peeked through the window, barely able to see through the swirling sand. A shape stumbled toward my porch, coughing, waving, trying not to fall over. It was Karen. Her blazer was ripped. Her hair was matted with dust. She looked terrified. I opened the door just enough for her to squeeze inside. She collapsed onto the floor, coughing uncontrollably. She choked. You have to help, it's burying us." "No kidding," I snapped. "This is what I tried to warn you about." She covered her face with shaking hands. "The streets, we can't see the road, cars are stuck, people are trapped, my porch is disappearing." "The green belt would have stopped this," I said quietly. She glared at me. Even in a life-threatening sandstorm, she somehow found the energy to be offended. "This is not my fault," she screamed over the wind. I pointed at the bare land outside. "You tore down the barrier. It wasn't just me, the board voted, and you," she jabbed her finger toward me. "You're supposed to maintain your property, your yard contributed to." "Enough," I barked. "Karen, your HOA dug its own grave, and now the storm is filling it." She went silent. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely scared, not angry, not controlling, not condescending, just human and terrified. A violent slam shook the house. The lights flickered. A popping sound echoed down the hallway. Something outside had snapped. Karen flinched. "What was that?" "Probably someone's fence." She covered her mouth. "Oh my God, is everyone okay out there?" I didn't know, but I had a sinking feeling the neighborhood was in chaos. When the storm finally calmed, hours later, we stepped outside. And what we found didn't look like our neighborhood anymore. It looked like a desert burial site. Mailboxes gone, lawns gone, driveways gone, half the HOA president's Lexus buried, half the street vanished under several feet of sand. People wandered out of their homes like survivors after a war, coughing, brushing sand out of their hair, staring at the destruction. Karen gasped. "My God, look at my yard." Her plants were unrecognizable, snapped or crushed under sand heaps. Her front porch was buried halfway up the steps. Her front door had a pile of dirt pressing against it from the outside. For the first time in years, she had nothing to say. Everyone turned to me because they knew I warned them, they knew I fought. They knew the HOA ignored every single thing I told them. One neighbor approached, an older man named Dennis. "You tried to tell us," he said softly. "We should have listened." But the worst was yet to come. Police cruisers and city trucks began pouring into the street. Officers stepped out, bewildered. One shook his head. "What the hell happened here? This street looks like a dune collapse." The city inspector stared directly at Karen. "Ma'am, is this where the wind barrier used to be?" Karen froze, and that's when I knew it wasn't over, not even close, because the city's wrath, it was just starting. The wind died down completely by morning, but the sand remained, piles and walls of it like miniature dunes carved across the neighborhood. The sun rose quietly, shining on a street that looked like it had been swallowed by the Sahara. Neighbors stepped out slowly, stunned, whispering among themselves, taking photos, digging out cars, shoveling their walkways. And then the city trucks returned, more of them. Sand removal crews, inspectors, environmental officers, even a drone team. But the most intimidating group by far was the team of city compliance officers, clipboards loaded, eyes scanning every inch of destruction with surgical precision. Karen stood at the edge of her property with her arms crossed so tightly they trembled. She tried fixing her hair even though it was caked with sand. Officer Martinez, the city's head environmental inspector, approached her with a thick binder. He adjusted his glasses and gave her a long look, the kind that said, "I already know what you did." "Ma'am," he said calmly, "we received a report about unauthorized land alteration in this sector. Were you or your association responsible for removing the vegetation behind these homes?" She opened her mouth, shut it, opened it again. "Well, the board, I stepped forward. "Yes, the HOA ordered it without city approval." Her head snapped toward me so fast sand flew off her shoulder. "You don't speak for the board." "Someone has to," I said, "since you won't tell the truth." The officer raised a hand. "It's fine. We already reviewed the timestamped drone footage." Karen paled. "F footage. City contracting drones monitor erosion-sensitive zones 24/7, Martinez explained. "We saw the bulldozers, we saw the crew, and we saw the HOA president." He looked right at her, sign the authorization forms. A small crowd gathered, phones discreetly recorded. Karen stammered, "It wasn't we didn't think, it was just overgrown scrub." Martinez flipped open his binder and revealed aerial photos. This scrub was a designated windbreak engineered to prevent exactly this kind of sand encroachment. He gestured around at the knee-high dunes covering driveways. "This neighborhood is now officially classified as a compromised erosion zone." Board member Greg piped up, "Okay, but can't the city just clear it? I mean, this is what we pay taxes for, right?" Martinez slowly closed the binder. "Sir," he said, "evenly the city will clear it, but the cost will be billed to the responsible party." You could hear Karen's soul leave her body. "W8," she said weakly. No, you can't charge the HOA. Our budget, we don't have that kind of money." "How much is that kind?" a neighbor asked. Martinez took a breath. "Estimated at $480,000. The neighborhood gasped in unison. Karen swayed like she might pass out. 480 what? "Well," Martinez said, "that includes removal, reconstruction of the destroyed windbreak, replanting, soil stabilization, and environmental penalties." "Environmental what?" Karen squeaked. "Penalties," he repeated, "for altering protected land." She tried laughing, but it came out like a strangled cough. No, this is impossible. We have bylaws, we have authority." "You violated city code," Martinez corrected. "Your bylaws don't override environmental protections." Another officer stepped forward, holding a stack of printed citations. "We'll need your signature, ma'am." Karen stared at the papers like they were on fire. "This must be a mistake. This can't all fall on me." "Oh, but it can," I said quietly. "You signed the order. You ignored every warning, including mine." She turned to the neighbors. "Are you all just going to stand there, say something, support your board?" But they didn't. In fact, one by one, neighbors stepped back, arms crossed, eyes cold. Sand still clinging to their clothes like the storm's aftertaste. Dennis spoke first. "We trusted you and you buried our street, literally." A woman added, "You dismissed every concern. You said you knew better." Greg tried, stepping in. "Okay, let's not gang up." "No," someone interrupted. "We are absolutely allowed to gang up. She destroyed our homes." Voices rose, anger surged, people filmed. Some neighbors demanded Karen resign. Others demanded reimbursement for damages. But then police arrived, 2 cruisers, lights still flashing, officers stepping out with that firm, prepared posture that said they were expecting conflict. Officer Lee approached the group. "We received a disturbance call. Is everything okay here?" Karen rushed to him like a drowning person grabbing a life raft. "Officer, you need to stop them. They're yelling, they're threatening me." Officer Lee looked at the crowd, calm, exhausted, covered in sand, but not violent. "Ma'am, no one appears to be threatening you." "But they're there," She flailed her hands dramatically. They're angry. Officer Lee raised an eyebrow. Given the situation, I'd be surprised if they were. Karen shrieked, "This is harassment." Now the officer sighed. "Ma'am, the city has jurisdiction here, not you, and harassment requires more than people being upset." She stomped her foot, genuinely stomped like a toddler. "I demand protection." Officer Lee looked at me, then at Martinez, then at the cameras, and he made a choice. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "you need to calm down. You're escalating the situation." Her eyes widened and her voice cracked. "I am the HOA president. You listen to me." Officer Lee pulled out his notepad. "All right, I'm going to ask you to take a seat on your porch for now." "My porch is buried." "Well," he said, "then choose a spot where you won't sink." People snorted, some laughed outright. Karen's face burned red, but she wasn't defeated yet. No, she had one more meltdown left. She pointed at me violently, jabbing her finger like she was stabbing the air. "This is your fault," the crowd gasped. I felt every face turn toward me. "My fault," I repeated. "Karen, you destroyed the barrier, and everyone here knows it." Her voice cracked into hysterics. "If you hadn't complained, if you hadn't resisted, if you hadn't—" Officer Lee cut her off. "Ma'am, blaming your neighbor for your decision is not going to help you." And then Karen snapped. "Fine," she screamed. "If I go down, the whole HOA goes down with me?" Gasps, whispers, someone muttered. "What did she just say?" I felt it in my gut. This wasn't over, not even close, because when Karen gets desperate, she gets dangerous. And the next decision she made was the one that finally blew everything apart. Karen sat on her half-buried porch in total silence, staring at the sand dunes surrounding her house like she couldn't believe the storm had the nerve to exist. The city officers were still documenting the damage. Neighbors were trying to dig out their cars, and the HOA board was huddled together, whispering like frightened meerkats. But Karen, she was scheming. I saw it. Her eyes darted. Her fingers tapped her clipboard rhythmically, the same way she always did before twisting the narrative into whatever fantasy made her feel powerful. Officer Martinez walked past her again, heading toward the truck. She suddenly sprang to her feet. "Wait," she called out. "I need to clarify something." Martinez paused. "Yes, ma'am." "The land was already unstable," she said quickly. "We didn't cause this. The storm would have happened anyway. We actually removed dangerous vegetation. Yes, overgrowth that was a fire hazard. We were protecting the neighborhood." Even Greg squinted at her, confused. "That's not what you told us." Karen shot him a death glare. "Greg, remember the meeting, the fire talk?" "There was no fire talk," he muttered. "Yes, there was," she insisted. "You just forgot." Martinez took a slow, steady breath, the kind people take when trying not to lose patience. "Ma'am," he said, "the drone footage already shows your justification, visual improvement, not fire safety." Karen blushed, then doubled down. "Well, we deleted that version. Yes, we updated it. We have the new documents." She didn't. Everyone knew she didn't. Martinez lifted his clipboard. "We have all versions archived, and they all say the same thing." Her voice cracked. "That isn't fair." "Ma'am," he said, "facts are not required to be fair." Her jaw hung open. Meanwhile, neighbors continued digging, coughing, helping one another, and side-eyeing Karen with a mixture of anger and disbelief. A woman across the street shouted, "This is your mess, Karen." Another neighbor chimed in, "Yeah, our roofs are damaged, our cars are buried, and you're trying to lie your way out of it." Karen snapped back, "I'm trying to help." Someone yelled, "By lying." "I am not lying." Martinez turned toward me. "Did she receive your warnings in writing?" "Yes," I said. "I emailed the board, attached official city erosion reports too." He nodded. "Would you be willing to forward those emails to us?" Before I could answer, Karen screeched, "Those emails are irrelevant." I raised a brow. "You didn't even read them." Her face tightened. "I read some enough, and your tone was rude." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Rude? You tore down a city-protected wind barrier." Karen stomped her foot in the sand, which was a mistake, because she sank 4 inches and had to yank her shoe out with a sucking sound. People snorted. I swear even Martinez hid a smile. Then Karen turned to everyone else and shouted the line that changed the whole conversation. "You all let this happen too. You voted me in. You approved the budget. This storm is everyone's fault, not just mine." Gasps. Neighbors froze. One woman whispered, "Is she serious?" Karen kept going, spiraling. "You want to blame me for everything. Fine. But when the city finds us, that means higher dues. All of you will pay, everyone. You think you can just clap your hands and make this go away?" A man yelled, "Maybe if you resign." "Resign." Her voice cracked like glass. "I built this HOA. Without me, this place would fall apart." Dennis muttered, "It's already fallen apart." That one hit her. She trembled, pointed at him, then at me, then at the sandstorm-wrecked neighborhood. "You think you're all so smart, but none of you understand what real leadership takes." Oh, the irony. Martinez stepped between her and the angry crowd. "Ma'am, please calm down." Karen was beyond calming. Her eyes burned with some mixture of humiliation and fury. "No, I will not be blamed for an act of nature. And if the city or any of you tries to pin fines on this HOA, I will sue every single person here." Neighbors recoiled. Martinez shook his head. Threatening the public doesn't help your case. I don't care. Then she did something nobody expected. She grabbed her clipboard and marched toward the buried windbreak. I followed with my eyes, confused. What is she doing? A neighbor whispered. Greg answered nervously. She gets like this. She stomped right up to the edge of the dune-covered land and declared loud enough for everyone to hear. I'll prove the land was unstable before we removed it. I yelled. Karen, don't. But she was already climbing the edge of the dune, sinking, sliding, struggling. Neighbors gasped. The sand shifted under her, a mini collapse. She fell forward with a scream, disappearing waist-deep. People shouted, grab her! She's sinking! 2 neighbors rushed toward her, pulling her out just before the sand closed in. Her blazer was torn, her hair wild, her face scratched and red. She looked like a cartoon villain who just learned physics exists. And in front of everyone, gasping, covered in sand, she muttered the words that sealed her fate. Okay, maybe we made a mistake. The neighbors erupted, shouting, filming, cursing. Someone yelled, a mistake worth $500,000. Another shouted, resign already. Karen sobbed. This isn't over. But oh, she had no idea how far from over this really was. Because the city's full report, it hadn't even been delivered yet, and when it arrived, everything exploded. 2 days later, the sand was still piled in dunes taller than mailboxes, but crews were slowly carving paths through the streets. Dump trucks came and went. Neighbors kept digging out their porches. Karen hid inside her house like a bunker. When the city notice arrived, it wasn't an email. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a phone call. It was a full convoy, 3 city SUVs. 1 sand erosion engineer, 2 environmental compliance officers, and a police cruiser for civil stability, according to the dispatch notes. Karen's front door cracked open like she feared sunlight. The moment she saw the group approaching, she tried to slam the door shut, but Officer Lee placed his foot in the way. Ma'am, he said calmly, you need to come out now. Karen's voice wavered. I'm not dressed. We're not here about your outfit, Martinez said sharply. We're here about the damage. She slowly stepped outside like someone walking into a courtroom. All the neighbors gathered, phones recording. Nobody wanted to miss this. Martinez opened a thick folder and began reading. The HOA of Cedar Ridge Estates is hereby found liable for environmental damage, illegal land alteration, removal of protected vegetation, failure to obtain city permits, willful negligence, and creating hazardous conditions for residents. Karen whimpered, willful. Martinez continued coldly. You ignored written warnings, you dismissed resident concerns, you signed demolition orders. The storm damage is a direct and foreseeable result of your actions. She shook her head violently. No, I didn't know, I thought, Greg whispered. She absolutely knew. Karen glared at him so intensely he backed up 2 steps. Martinez flipped to the next page. The city hereby mandates full restoration of the wind barrier payment of environmental penalties payment for sand removal payment for erosion, controls a supervised replanting project mandatory leadership restructuring of the HOA, Karen gasped. Leadership restructuring? What does that mean? Officer Lee stepped forward. It means you are removed as HOA president effective immediately. She staggered backward like she'd been hit. No. No, they can't, you can't, I didn't, but Martinez wasn't finished. The city also requires that you specifically, Karen Whitlow, reimburse the HOA for your personal role in authorizing the demolition. Neighbors gasped. What? No way. She deserves it. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't make me pay. I can't. This is insane. Officer Lee didn't blink. Ma'am, you are personally liable under Section 514, willful environmental misconduct. She clutched her hair with trembling hands. No. Then she tried a new angle, turning toward me. This is your fault, she screamed. You stirred up drama, you sent emails, you sabotaged the board, you manipulated everyone. I took a deep breath, calm, firm. Karen, I tried to warn you, I tried to stop you, I begged you to read the reports, you destroyed the barrier anyway. Her voice cracked into hysteria. You should have fought harder. The entire neighborhood shouted at once. Are you insane? He did fight. He tried everything. You ignored him. Martinez raised a hand for silence. The city's decision is final. Karen's face collapsed, the defeat soaking in like cold rain. You can't do this, she whispered. You're ruining my life, a neighbor muttered. Welcome to the club. Martinez signed the final page and handed it to her. This is your official notice. Karen stared at it like it was a death sentence. And for the record, he added, the resident who warned you saved lives. If he hadn't emailed us after your demolition, we wouldn't have had early environmental alerts coming in. Neighbors turned to me. Some nodded, some clapped. Karen glared at me through tears, eyes burning with resentment. This isn't over, she whispered. But it was for her, however, not for the HOA, because the storm had one last surprise. A second sandstorm was forming, and this one, twice as strong. The first storm buried the neighborhood. The second one threatened to erase it. By the end of the week, weather alerts were flashing nonstop. Meteorologists warned about a massive incoming sand front, larger, hotter, more violent, and predicted to hit the exposed land like a battering ram. The city urged everyone to evacuate temporarily. But guess who refused? The HOA board, the two remaining members who still clung to their tiny scraps of power like toddlers refusing to share toys. Greg approached me one afternoon while I was installing temporary storm panels. "So," he said awkwardly, "we're thinking maybe we shouldn't evacuate." I paused my drill. "Why? The neighborhood needs leadership," he said, puffing his chest. "If we leave, people will panic." I blinked slowly. "You're not leadership, you're a cautionary tale," he frowned. "Well, we still control the HOA, and we don't think the storm will be that bad." I stared at him. "Greg, the last one buried us in sand. This next one is doubling wind speeds. The green belt isn't there anymore. Nothing stands between us and the plains." "I mean, yeah, but if we leave, people might blame us again." "They will blame you," I said, "because you ignored every warning." He shrugged. "That's democracy. That's stupidity." Before he could respond, Corinne's door swung open. She appeared wearing sunglasses, a mask, and a sun hat like she was disguising herself from paparazzi. "You," she shouted at Greg. "Inside, meeting now." Greg winced. "Coming." He ran inside as if summoned by dark magic. A neighbor walked by and muttered, "Why is she still here? Isn't she fired?" She should have been. But Corinne, being Corinne, refused to leave the presidency even after the city removed her. She kept insisting she needed time for a proper transition. No one believed her. That evening, the emergency sirens wailed. Incoming sandstorm, evacuation recommended immediately. People panicked. Cars backed out of driveways, families loaded trunks, dogs barked, kids cried. I helped 3 elderly neighbors load their bags. And just when I thought maybe, just maybe, the HOA brain trust would finally listen, I saw them. Corinne and Greg dragging out sandbags. To fight a sandstorm. "Oh dear God," I whispered. Corinne yelled, "We can block the street, create a barrier." I stepped closer. "Corinne, stop, you can't outsound a sandstorm." "You don't know that," Greg added. "We can create a perimeter, look." He pointed at the pathetically small pile of sandbags stacked unevenly. "It's like a wall. It's like a suggestion of a wall," I corrected. Corinne snapped. "You're just jealous you didn't think of it first." I stared at her. "This is insane. You're going to get people killed." "You're exaggerating," she snapped. Again, like always. The wind started building, a heavy, eerie gust that pulled at clothes and sent dust swirling. People screamed, dogs howled, car alarms went off from the pressure shift. I tried one last time. "Corinne, please, for the love of everyone here, evacuate," she shouted over the rising wind. "I am the HOA president. I do not run." The sandstorm hit. A monstrous roar exploded across the land, louder, wilder, angrier than the first storm. Sand blasted down the street like a tidal wave. The sky went dark instantly. Visibility 0, the sandbags Corinne stacked. Gone in 2 seconds, just vanished, sucked into the storm like confetti. Corinne screamed. Greg dove behind a mailbox. The mailbox then ripped out of the ground and rolled down the street. I grabbed Corinne by the arm. "Move," she resisted. "Let go, I can handle this." "I can." A violent gust knocked her off her feet. I dragged her inside my house and slammed the door. "Sit," I commanded. She sat trembling, staring at the door like the devil himself was outside, scratching to get in. The storm roared for hours, windows vibrated, sand slammed the siding like bullets, the roof creaked under the pressure. Corinne whispered, Is the neighborhood gone?" "I don't know," I said. She hugged herself tightly. "I didn't mean for this to happen." For once, I believed her. She really didn't. She wasn't evil. She was just arrogant, power-hungry, and unable to admit she was wrong. And arrogance mixed with authority, it always ends in disaster. When the storm finally passed, we opened the door, silence, stillness. Everything covered in dunes taller than cars. It didn't look like a neighborhood anymore. It looked like nature reclaimed the land. Corinne stepped outside slowly and collapsed to her knees. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What have I done?" For the first time since I'd met her, she cried. Not angry tears, not frustrated tears, real, devastated tears. And as neighbors emerged, exhausted, battered, scared, everyone realized something. The HOA was done. Finished. Buried by the very land it tried to control. Before we continue, what would you have done? Should the HOA pay everything back? Should Corinne face charges? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading them all. And if you're into HOA karma stories like this, make sure you subscribe for the next chapter. By morning, the neighborhood looked like a lost civilization, half-buried rooftops peeking from dunes, street signs sticking out like crooked tombstones, and sand piled so high it touched the bottom edges of second-story windows. The whole street was a graveyard of swallowed cars, choked gutters, fallen fences, and collapsed patios. But what stunned everyone most wasn't the destruction. It was the silence. No children playing, no lawnmowers, no distant music, no chirping birds, nothing. just the low, eerie whistle of wind weaving through the dunes. People stood on their porches, staring in shock. A few cried. Some tried to shovel paths but quickly realized it was like trying to empty an ocean with a spoon. And in the middle of the street, Karen. She was on her knees, hands buried in the sand, staring at her half-buried house as if the universe had personally betrayed her. Her blazer was torn. Her sunglasses cracked, her voice hoarse from screaming during the storm. Greg stood beside her looking like he wanted to evaporate. I walked toward them with a group of neighbors. We weren't angry anymore, not like before. Now there was something heavier, something everyone felt, finality. "This is it," Dennis whispered beside me. "The HOA can't survive this." He was right. Across the street, a group of neighbors tore down the HOA announcement board, literally ripped it out of the ground. They cheered when it fell. Others stomped on the old HOA violation signs. Someone even threw Karen's last printed warning notice into the sand like a funeral offering. The HOA's illusion of power evaporated with the storm. City trucks rolled in again more than before. Bulldozers, dump trucks, environmental scientists, drone teams documenting the disaster. A city official, this time a department supervisor, stepped out of a white SUV. He was tall, stern, and carried a briefcase instead of a clipboard. Karen instantly panicked. No more, please, we can fix this. I promise we can fix everything." He didn't respond. He just opened his case, pulled out documents, and called the neighbors to gather. Everyone huddled around him, breath held, shoulders tense. "My name is Director Rourke. I'm here to deliver the official findings of the city's Emergency Environmental Commission." People exchanged nervous looks. Rourke continued, voice steady but cold. "This neighborhood has suffered 2 catastrophic sand events due to the unauthorized removal of designated protective vegetation. The HOA is found fully responsible for the triggering conditions." Karen shook her head violently. No, I tried to help. I was making improvements. I can explain." Rourke silenced her with a single look. "Ma'am, you have spoken enough," someone whispered, finally. He continued. "The HOA failed to comply with environmental guidelines, ignored warnings from residents, and repeatedly obstructed city officials during the storm response." We all turned toward Karen and Greg. They looked like criminals being read their charges. Rourke lifted a stamp packet. "The Cedar Ridge Estates HOA license is officially revoked." People gasped. Some cheered. One older woman literally shouted, "Thank God," and hugged her husband. Karen looked physically ill. You can't do that," she said weakly. "The HOA, it's the heart of this community." "No," Rourke said, "it was the chokehold." Neighbors murmured agreement. Karen tried to argue again. But without the HOA, who will enforce the rules, who will approve modifications, who will maintain standards?" I stepped forward. "Us," I said simply. "The actual residents." People nodded around me. "We don't need a dictator," someone added. "Or a demolition crew," another muttered. Rourke wasn't done. "In addition, the HOA leadership, including you, Ms. Whitlow, will be held personally liable for city damages and environmental restoration." Karen shrieked. "Personally?" Rourke nodded. "Yes, your actions were deliberate, reckless, and negligent." She stumbled backward, sinking into the sand. No, I can't pay that. I'll lose everything." "That," he said, "is not the city's concern." She cried into her hands, but Rourke still wasn't finished. The next thing he said shocked everyone. "The city is also filing a criminal negligence claim." Gasps cracked through the crowd. Karen's mouth dropped open. "Criminal? No, you can't. That's a misunderstanding. I never." Rourke stayed calm. "Ma'am, 2 sandstorms endangered dozens of residents. Emergency crews risked their lives rescuing people. The removal of the windbreak directly contributed to hazardous conditions. There will be a formal hearing." Karen's legs gave out. She collapsed into the sand. Greg stepped forward, trembling. "Am I included in that?" Rourke handed him a sealed envelope. "Yes." Greg fainted. He actually fainted. Someone caught him before he hit the ground. The neighborhood erupted, talking, yelling, cheering, filming, the fall of the HOA happening right there in the open, like witnessing the end of a tyrannical era. Karen sobbed uncontrollably. I never wanted this. I never wanted it to get so bad. I just wanted order. I just wanted things to look perfect." I knelt beside her. "Perfection isn't the problem," I said softly. "You destroyed what protected us, not because it was dangerous, not because it was ugly, but because you couldn't control it." She cried harder. A neighbor yelled, "We warned you." Another added, "You ignored us every time." I raised my voice. "Let her be. The city will handle the consequences now." Rourke glanced at me with respect. Then he turned to the crowd. "Cleanup will take months. Reconstruction of the wind barrier begins immediately. Residents will not be billed. The liability lies solely with the HOA and its leadership." A wave of relief washed over everyone. For the first time since the demolition, people smiled. Karen whispered one last thing. "Is it really over?" I looked out over the dunes, the destruction, the sun rising over a scarred neighborhood ready to heal. "Yes," I said. "It's over." Reconstruction began the next morning. Sound of bulldozers returning, this time for good, echoed through the neighborhood, but instead of panic, it brought relief. Crews dug out streets. Workers installed wind barriers. Landscaping teams planted new shrubs and saplings. City engineers mapped the restoration project. For the first time in months, people were working together, no fines, no threats, no HOA lurking behind every mailbox with a clipboard. The neighborhood finally breathed. Karen, meanwhile, stayed mostly inside her house. Curtains drawn, car half buried, porch still covered in sand. She was a ghost haunting the place she once ruled. One afternoon, a police cruiser pulled up to her driveway. Officer Lee stepped out, walked to her door, and knocked. We all froze. Was this it? Was this when they arrested her? A few neighbors gathered, not to celebrate, but because the entire story was reaching its inevitable conclusion. Karen answered the door with red, swollen eyes. Officer Lee spoke gently but firmly. "Ma'am, you're required to attend a mandatory hearing at the county court. You've been officially charged." Karen's lips trembled. Do I have to go now?" "No," he said, "but you need to sign this." She signed with shaking hands. Officer Lee leaned in slightly. "For what it's worth, people warned you. You could have prevented all this." Karen looked at him like a broken mirror, cracked, reflecting regret. When he left, she noticed us watching. She didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't blame. She simply closed her door. A quiet, defeated click. That evening, the neighborhood gathered at the community park, the first unofficial meeting without the HOA. Dennis stood on a picnic table. "All right, folks, show of hands, who wants an HOA again?" Not a single hand rose, not one. Someone shouted, "Let's run our own neighborhood." Cheers erupted. We created committees, gardening volunteers, maintenance groups, street watch teams. Everyone joined something. Real unity. Enforced unity, real community. Weeks passed. The new windbreak sprouted fresh green shoots. Birds returned, kids played again, the sand cleared, the streets came back to life. One day, while I was watering my yard, Karen approached slowly, not yelling, not angry, not even defensive, just tired. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded cautiously. "I know you hate me," she said quietly. "I know everyone does." "I don't hate you," I said. "I hate what you did." She swallowed hard. "I lost control. I didn't want things to get messy. I wanted order, beauty. I thought if everything looked perfect, people would feel safe, but I guess I forgot that safety isn't something you can enforce, it's something you protect." That was the first time she ever understood. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." I studied her face, worn, humbled. "I accept your apology," I said truthfully. "But Karen, you can't undo the damage." She nodded, tears spilling down. "I know." She turned to leave, but I added, "You can help rebuild, though." She stopped, shocked. "You'd let me help after everything?" "Yes, but as a neighbor, not a president." Karen let out a shaky breath. "Maybe that's all I should have been." And for the first time, she walked away without arguing. The court case came weeks later. Karen pled guilty. Greg, too. The judge ordered community service, fines, mandatory environmental training, and restitution payments. No prison, but enough consequences that they would never forget. Afterward, neighbors held a celebration barbecue at the rebuilt green belt, the wind rustling gently through the new plants. Someone asked me, "Do you think Karen learned her lesson?" I looked at her across the park. She was helping a kid plant a new shrub, dirt on her hands, no clipboard in sight. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think the sandstorm taught her more than we ever could." As the sun set, the neighborhood looked peaceful again, like it had survived a war and was now ready to grow stronger than ever. And just before the video fades out, I want to ask you, what would you have done if your HOA tore down your wind barrier? Should Karen have faced jail? Should neighborhoods have the power to kick out HOAs permanently? Comment below. I love reading your thoughts. And make sure to subscribe for more stories where HOAs finally get what they deserve.